For those readers familiar with astrology, it may seem a bit peculiar to focus so much attention on planetary influences without even a mention of the constellations. Although the readings do occasionally mention the influence of constellations, the emphasis is heavily weighted toward planetary sojourns as the foundation of Edgar Cayce's system of astrology. Planetary sojourns only matter to the extent that souls inhabited those orbs, and thus respond to the vibratory energy of those realms when the planets are in certain astronomical positions that facilitate an energy resonance with the soul. One of the important implications of Cayce's model is that in order for constellations to have a similar astrological impact, souls must have also resided in those distant realms. Thus, Cayce's astrology leads back to the theme of universal citizenship. Distant star systems are like exotic ports of call along the path of the soul's journey through materiality. Ancient systems of astrology recognize the associations between planetary alignments and specific traits and urges. On the whole, these patterns coincide with the patterns of Cayce's planetary sojourns. The ancients looked up into the heavens at night and noticed patterns of movement. They assigned meaning to the patterns that related to their daily lives in practical ways: omens, prophecy, explanation for behaviors or urges, and so forth. Modern astronomers also look into the heaven and record patterns, but fail to see any connection to their daily lives or innermost experiences. For those with a scientifically oriented worldview, astrology is simply an outdated and unscientific predecessor to astronomy. Cayce regards astrology as a valid human endeavor. The position of planets and other heavenly bodies is somehow intimately connected to our innermost thoughts, emotions, and urges. The basis for these associations is not simply geometry or alignments of heavenly bodies in any mathematical sense. It is because we were there. Each of us has sojourned in the planetary realms of this solar system and other systems in the vastness of interstellar space. The planets and stars do not control our destiny. It is a matter of how we used our will to make choices in each of the various realms of consciousness associated with the planets and star systems of the cosmos. If we used our will to make constructive choices and actions, the influence of a given planet or constellation will be benevolent. If we made destructive, i.e. selfish, choices in those realms, the influence is adverse. With regard to astrological influences, we are simply meeting the choices that we have made in the past. Nothing surpasses the use of will. The choices we make in the present supersede those of the past. The gift of will is both a blessing and a curse, depending on how we use it. In Cayce's cosmology, the human body is like a radio receiver and transmitter that is capable of receiving and sending information via subtle energies. This is the basis for how planetary sojourns, and astrology in general, influences our consciousness. We resonate to the planets and stars. Whether the vibration we pick up is a positive or negative influence depends on how we used our will in those realms. Of course, we have the choice to ignore the signal, just as we would a radio station that we find boring. To carry our analogy a step further, imagine that our ability to perceive the subtle vibrations associated with planets and stars is like a radio in an automobile that is traveling through mountains. The signal is sometimes stronger or weaker, or entirely undetectable, depending on where we are located in relation to the terrain and the signal. Likewise, as we travel through the universe, riding the surface of this planet, our bodies are more or less able to resonate to the vibration of heavenly bodies depending upon our relative position. Let me share a personal experience that is analogous to Casey's model of the astrological influences. Several years ago, I had a pleasant trip to Costa Rica where I gave a series of lectures. Each morning, I walked in the neighborhood where I was staying and enjoyed the architecture, which included an impressive new government building. Several months after my trip, I walked past a television set that carried a news story about the government building in Costa Rica. Hostages had been taken and were being held in the building by men seeking the release of prisoners. As I watched the program, thoughts and feelings washed over me. Memories of the people I had met came into my mind, and I wondered if anyone I had met during my trip had gotten involved in the crisis. The mental and emotional responses that I had while viewing the TV were based on my past experiences. Without that trip and the experiences I had while in Costa Rica, I may have walked on past the TV without noticing the story. I resonated to that situation because I had been there. So it is with astrological influences. We resonate to the universe based on how we have used our will in the various realms where we have sojourned. The image of souls taking flight from one planet to another is a common theme in ancient traditions throughout the world. In his book Star Maps, William Fix documents the diverse manifestations of the concept of magical flight from various sources ranging from the shaman's journey to modern parapsychological research on out-of-body experiences. Of particular note is the pyramid text of Yunus from ancient Egypt that describes how the pharaoh periodically underwent a ritual near-death experience that allowed him to project out of body and into space. Based on these extraterrestrial excursions, star maps were created to portray the soul's flight and return as part of a dramatic initiation experience that provided the pharaoh with insights for leading his people. The star maps that were painted as murals on the ceilings and walls of pyramid temples are suggestive of the soul's planetary and stellar destinations between earthly lives. Thus, the recognition of our solar system and other star systems deep in space as the after-death realm of the soul provided a foundation for ancient Egyptian cosmology and the mystery religions of antiquity. Based on his research, Fix concludes that the message of the star maps and the many testimonies of antiquity is that man is older than the oldest bone on earth. Man was a conscious, sentient being before he came to earth. Perhaps to use the image suggested earlier, he appeared like hundreds of millions of tiny stars that had comprised a living river of light which flowed from an unnamable source. Man came freely of his own will and choice, descending en masse like a shower of sparks of light. Thus, the Egyptian star maps are archaeological testaments to the soul's inherent cosmic citizenship and mobility against the heavenly bodies that represent planes of consciousness beyond our present earthly sojourn. In addition to star maps, Mr. Fix has made some wonderful contributions to our understanding of human origins and destiny. We will consider another of his books, The Bone Peddlers, in a later section that focuses more specifically on human origins.